Okay, this meeting is being recorded. All right, again, welcome to everyone that is on the call. I just want to do a brief did you know type of deal for what your metaphysical team does for you or what we provide for you. So I am going to include this link in our chat box in case you have that open. It's going to go to everyone. And again, if you do have a question, we do ask that you make sure that that's addressed to everyone because it could help someone else. All right. So that is the link to our Meta Solutions fiscal page. Okay. This is where a lot of the meat and potatoes are there that we put out helpful tips, documents, checklists. If you'll notice on the top right-hand side there where it says data access for redesign districts, if say you ever had to work remotely or you're working from home or you happen to be, seriously, it's happened. We've had people that have been with family at hospitals and you've needed to get something done. Please know you can get to our Meta Solutions website and pull down your link for your application. You do not have to have a VPN to access that, okay? So just want to make you aware. And of course, this is drop downs and you can find your district, click on it, and your same username and password will work, okay? If you scroll to a little bit down, again, I don't want to pre-ticket to ride here on Zoom webinars. So there's some information here on the left-hand side. More ideally, I want to draw your attention to this link here. I'm going to pull it up a little bit. It says YouTube Fiscal Services Channel. We probably ought to make that a little bigger now or something because we do use that quite a bit. This is where all of our recordings go with the exception of our roundtables, okay? Those go at the bottom of the page and I'm going to show you that. If you've not been involved in one of our roundtables before, my goodness, please join us. Those roundtables are the second Tuesday of every month. Stephanie, our fiscal services manager, usually sends out the reminder the day before that has what the agenda will be for the next day and the links to log on to. Those are super helpful. The intent of those is we give anywhere from a 15 to half-hour little training, a little blurb it type of thing. Did you know? Helpful tips. Those kinds of things that this kind of a training doesn't encompass, right? And then as soon as that's done, we open it up to the floor for like an open lab, kind of like an open sharing. You know, districts that come to the table say, hey, I had this helped me tremendously. Or we may have districts saying, hey, does anybody have a good resource for this? And that's an avenue for you guys to share amongst yourselves because you're in the trenches, right? And then that helps us, or we may be able to direct you to some information that honestly you just didn't know about because you didn't have to know about it before, okay? So you can ignore the change password. There's some IRS links there, some other links. Down at the bottom, there's two areas. There's the downloads area, and then there's the redesign documents. So if you know of any EMIS staff that you've now just started working closely with or you're just getting acclimated to all of that, there's some EMIS staff information in here so you could direct them here, okay? So be our EMIS buddy's friend. Like we love good correspondence between payroll and our EMIS folks. Our calendar year-end instructions, we update those every year. Our fiscal year-end instructions, we update those every year. We usually send those to you and then you can also find them here. Roundtable discussions. This is where you'll find the USAS and USPS discussions and their applicable recordings. And then we have folders for USAS and USPSR related items. Now, this is not to replace the SSDT's documentation, but these are like little added tips and tricks that we've given out there. For example, in payroll, this is one that I love using. It is this one right here. So I'm going to give props to Carol Van Sickle because she put this together. We had it in Classic and she vamped it to redesign. So if you ever use Classic's board disk, or again, some of you may not even know what Classic was, and gosh, that's hard for me to believe, but that's good. But you're using the employer distribution in USPS, this document is the bomb. It walks you through the breadcrumb trail. What's needed, what comes next, and if you're a district that doesn't use it, you can ignore it. all right? But just wanted to let you know that we do have some extra tools out here for you to use. One other item that's going to be handy to you is this folder called Spreadsheet Templates. So in case you ever wanted to dip your toe in the import world, okay, let's say you're not one that does that, there are actually some templates out here for compensation loads or new contract. Now, I'll say we have this new contract spreadsheet out here that's different than the new contract extract that you're getting out of your USPS. So take pause on that. We'll come back to that. And then your USP import. Now, this USP import is used for attendance absences and can be also used to post items to future and current. So we are going to talk about that a little bit this morning later on. This we're going to revisit next summer. We're hoping to do some in-person or simulcast trainings next year, but this little spreadsheet helps you kind of outlay your new contracts for the summer, okay? So without going deeply into this, we seem to have more and more districts that are starting to use this, but it kind of gives a breadcrumb trail, kind of gives that roadmap of here's my pay groups, here's when they start, here's when they stop, and how do I get them to pay off correctly, and how do I get their days to pull in for the next year correctly. So that's a fun little spreadsheet that you can use. It's a template, right? All right, so again, that's just some information that we wanted to show you to make sure that you were aware that there are some additional resources out there besides the SSDT documentation. All right, so let's dig in, okay? We're going to go into our USPS application. If you would like, everybody trains differently. You do you, okay? And when we say that, I learn differently than Michelle, or I learn differently than Jen, or everybody just learns differently and at a different pace. Some people learn by doing hands-on, some by watching and taking notes. You do you. If you have a couple monitors, you could be watching what we're doing on one screen and have the other one up. So again, completely up to you. All right. On the agenda that we sent you, there were links that were applicable to each one of the sections that we're going to cover. I'm not going to always reference back to the SSDT documentation, but there will be a couple like payroll items when we get to that. I think that's on the second training that we do ask that you reference because it has a lot of start and stop dates that may be different based on your deduction type, okay? All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is employee. So we're going to go to core and we're going to go to employee. All right, so if you weren't sure how to set up an employee, there is actually out on the SSDT documentation, under the appendix area, there is a document that says how to add an employee, okay? So if that's something that you would like to download, you can actually download it in Word format and then make your own notes. We highly encourage that you do that with some of those how-to documents, okay? So there are two ways to get to an employee record. One is through core and employee. So anything under the core area is foundational items, okay? So what we're talking about here is we're going to be able to see like all of our employees on a lot of these information, and these are foundational in order to run payroll, okay? So if I wanted to see everyone's compensations, if I wanted to see everyone's pay distributions or all of my pay groups, this is the area I'm going to go. But if I wanted to reduce that noise down and I just want to see Jane Doe, right, I'm going to go to the employee dashboard, and we're going to talk about that. All right. So again, this is area one. You can see it through the core and employee area or through the employee dashboard. If you weren't aware of this area in the top right will help you to drill down on just one employee, okay? So let me show you how to access the employee through the dashboard. Okay, and this is from our redesign training. So props to Stephanie for putting in the Hocus Pocus Bette Midler pick there for some entertainment. But in order to get to the employee record, you just click on the down arrow and you can get to the employee record right here. Okay, so two ways to get to the employee record through core and then through the dashboard. Yes, Robin, thank you. Robin has added a comment in the chat. Employee onboarding, if you're not using that, does save a lot of time in setting up employees for the first time. So if that's not something you have or are utilizing, please reach out to your Meta team. You can call us or you can send us an email. Typically, those types of things we like to track. So an email would be great, but if not, then we can turn around and track that for you. But yes, employee onboarding does save a lot of time. All right, so that's the two areas to get to employee. All right, so let's go back into our core area. All right, so on there, in order to access your employee through the dashboard, it must be set up here first or through the employee onboarding, okay? So it's the chicken and the egg deal, right? You have to set up the employee screen before you can access them through the dashboard. If you're using employee onboarding, that's just a part of the process that you go through, but creating that employee is the first step, okay? Regardless of whether I click on create or I go into edit mode here, I'm going to see the exact same fields, okay? So just a brief review, this little icon, you can view the record. This icon allows you to view it and edit it. And then this is an archive it, okay? Rarely will you ever be able to see anything that you can delete, okay? Archive is a fancy way of saying conceal it, okay? But let's take a brief note. When it comes to archiving, huge information here. If you archive, that blocks it from any of your drop downs, but it's also going to drop it from reporting to the data collector. So don't irritate your EMIS staff, okay? Don't archive something that they are relying on seeing, okay? Don't get giddy and say, well, I'm gonna go archive this employee because they left last year. Hold please, we're gonna get more into details about EMIS reporting, but you may not want to archive them yet if they've not been reported as being separated, okay? So there's a lot of keys. If you ever want to archive something or someone and you're just not sure, especially because we're talking to some of our newer staff, reach out to us as Meta staff, okay? We'll go through the checklist with you, okay? There's also a great document, maybe one of my team can pull that up. If you go into USPS in the appendix, there's actually a document out there of when to archive and when not to. Can someone grab that for me and throw that in the chat? Thank you. All right, so let's go into a record, okay? So we like to have a little fun with our training. If you've not trained with us before, we try to make these lighthearted and fun, okay? So we have Daisy Duck here, okay? She's super popular in the training world for Meta USPS. So let's go through what's important, okay? You're not going to find a lot of fields in here that are required. There are enhancements out there to like show you, hey, you may want to address this and then give you the choice, okay? But one of the required things that you're going to want is the Social Security number. If you've already entered a new employee, you found out it does not require dashes, okay? Let's talk about the name and legal name, okay? Legal name basically trumps name, okay? There used to be a time when districts did not always go by the Social Security card to enter name. So instead of Robert Smith, it ended up being Bubba. And Bubba got his checks with Bubba on it, okay? So now in these days, most everybody goes by the Social Security card. So legal name, if you use that, if I had Daisy Duck up here and Daisy Duck down here, it wouldn't matter. The one's going to trump the other. If you just have in this name area, that's what's going to show on the W-2. If Daisy's name was actually Rebecca Duck, but she went by Daisy, then I would want to put Rebecca down here, and that will show up on all my governmental documents, ODJFS, W-2s, things like that, okay? So Typically, everybody just uses the name area because everybody's now using Social Security information. Address, pretty simplistic, okay? Contact information, that's going to be obviously their phone number if you home phone, primary email address, okay? If they have a school email address, we always recommend you use that there because that's where the primary one is for email direct deposits. They can actually have up to 3 and it would shoot off to all 3, okay? General application, okay? Married, well, Daisy is. Employee archived, okay? If I would have flagged this little circle with an X back here, it would automatically check mark it. So you can do it 2 ways. You can do it from the grid or you can do that here. Again, let me take a hit pause on this. For EMIS reporting, it's a trifecta, okay? It's a 3-part deal. It goes from, in this order, the employee record to the position to the compensation, okay? So if all 3 are marked as report to EMIS and you archive the employee, what's going to happen? Ain't none of it coming in, okay? So be very careful when and what you archive. Thank you, Jen, for putting that out there for me. Appreciate that. Emailing the direct deposit notice. Most everybody does that nowadays. So if they're receiving an email for a direct deposit notice, that's where you're going to flag it. This new hire reported, we get quite a few questions on this, or we used to. Are we supposed to check mark that or not? Here's the deal. If you are creating the new hire submission file and uploading it to ODJFS, you do not need to check mark this. Once you create that submission file, it will automatically check mark. If you're manually entering those new hires on ODJF's website, then you're going to want to come back in here and check mark that, just so you know that it has been reported, okay? Are they ODJFS reportable? Typically, everybody is, okay? So you're going to want to flag this. If they leave, if you have some options for reporting that you don't want to pull them anymore, then you could uncheck this to solve some of those issues. There is documentation on the employee document to help you with that. Here's our report to EMIS, okay? Now, here's a cool trick that I meant to show you at the very beginning. What if you're at the top of the record and you're like, all right, I don't want to scroll through this entire thing. I just want to find archives. If you've never seen or done this before, this is going to be your best time saver. You can do what's called a find. So if you hit your Control F key, okay, it's going to bring up a find box. I can start typing in the proper word, archive, okay? And it's going to start pulling it up. If I scroll down, there it is. Then it highlights it for me. So I don't have to go on the random 20-minute search for one field, okay? Another item is credential. People are looking for credential, or where's the non-credential? Okay, let's do this. Non, there we go. So if we take this down, it's going to highlight it, non-private, non-public. There's our non-certificate. I said non-credential, okay? So there's that, okay? All right. Without getting into the weeds with a whole lot of this is a lot of EMIS stuff. Not all payroll people do it, so I'm going to kind of skip that section for now. The standard payroll and standard personnel, a lot of districts don't use it. They're like, I don't have anything in it. We've never used it, but some districts do. For ACA reporting, there were some districts that used to, in the old software, put an F or a P for part-time and full-time, and that's what helped them pull in some of those people. So we don't want to say this is not used at all, but I want to put this little, I don't want to say B on it, but I do want to let you know there's something cool you can do with this. You can actually utilize this area and change the definitions of the standard payroll where it says payroll code 1. We could actually change that. Okay, we could change it to something like full-time or part-time. More importantly, let's look down at the date. So this is the example we would use in our redesign trainings for migration. Let's say you guys wanted a way to track your fingerprinting. You could actually change that payroll date to fingerprints received, and then payroll date 2, fingerprints expire, okay? Why is that important? One, it gives you an internal way of tracking without having an external spreadsheet, right? Secondly, all of these fields I can pull into a grid, right? So if you needed a way to pull in a report to find out who's done fingerprinting, who's expiring, all that kind of jazz, you could do that, okay? So again, those are just some 50,000 foot level things to give you some examples on. If these areas you just don't use at all and you just want to hide them, there is actually a way to hide these groups called standard payroll and standard personnel. Doesn't get rid of them forever, but please note, anything you do along those two lines, changing the description or changing the groups, is not just impacting what you see, it's impacting what everybody sees in USPS. That is not a user-defined area, okay? State reporting has a lot to do with EMIS information. So again, you may not be the one updating this, but I do want to bring to your attention this long-term illness area. Long-term illness is always, right now, always reported on the final staff collection. So typically this is updated in the spring by districts. Some districts do it along the way, and some districts track this on an external spreadsheet and then they come in and do this. Long-term illness for our new payroll people, okay, is 15 consecutive days of sick leave or dock time in combination, okay? If you have a break in that clock restarts, okay? So let's say you have someone that has 15 days, let's say they have 20 days out sick, okay, a combination of sick days and dock days. And then you have, they're a bus driver and they have a paid holiday. Well, that breaks the cycle, right? And then based on your master agreement, breaks the cycle. And then that following Tuesday, they pick back up and they're off for another 15 days. At the end of the year, you can combine the 20 and those 15 days to make 35, okay? So check with your EMIS people if you ever have situations like that. End of the day, this is where your long-term illness is going to be recorded. If we have any districts, well, and this is for new and old folks that are on here, to clear this, there is a mass change script that you can use to clear the long-term illness when you start a new school year, okay? So for those of you that are on here and you wrapped up last year and you reported last year, final staff's been done, this is something based on when you usually do it, you can go out and clear those long-term illness days for last year now if you wanted to. Okay, and then you have pay totals at the bottom. You'll notice that those are all grayed out. That's going to be based on the employee. So if the employee has a teaching job and they coach three positions, this is going to be a combination of all of those. Okay, all right. All right. Any questions on the employee record? Right, seeing none. Okay. I did have a private chat about when to archive. On this training, we're not going to get a whole lot into that. We're going to have an EMIS training coming up here, you know, kind of a New Year EMIS deal, letting folks know when they can start archiving old compensations, when they can start archiving anything, and then when they can change their report to EMIS flag. So that will be on a different training, but it's not to say I won't hit on a few of those things this morning, because we just do. All right, so no questions on employee. We're going to go up into core and ACH destination. Okay, ACH destination. All right, so this area here, this is basically, it is a table of all of your used through history bank routing numbers. Okay, so I know some of you may never have been on Classic, but there's some history to this. So when they were in the old software Classic, if an employee was ever tied to a bank routing number and it was ever used through historical payroll, so it was used on an ACH file or whatever, all of those migrated in. They were not duplicated, right? So if Stephanie, Jason, and I all had the same bank, just that bank's routing number is coming in. It's not coming in 3 times per employee, okay? So this is to be considered a table of bank routing numbers, okay? So what is important about this? In your area, you may not have descriptions listed, okay? But the cool thing is, if you have one that you're using all of the time, you can totally come in here and name that, okay? So you can come into the edit button, okay? And you'll notice how it pops up. We named this during one of our trainings, and I'm going to show you why that is important, okay? And could help you in the long run, all right? So why is this area important? When you are creating a direct deposit for a pay distribution, okay? You're creating a pay distribution for an employee, and it happens to be direct deposit, not check, okay? When you create that, it requires the ACH destination. It requires to know what the bank routing number is going to be. So you must have that set up here first before you go add it to the employee record, okay? Remember chicken and the egg? Well, however you want to call that, this is actually the horse before the cart, okay? So you want to make sure you have your bank routing number in here. So let's take this example. If I am going into Daisy Duck, and let's say I need to set up a new pay distribution, okay? And I do create, okay, you know she already has one sitting out here, and I do, we're going to go into this pay distribution information later, but I'm going to show you the impact of the ACH. If I do add pay distribution, yes, it's going to be direct deposit. Do you see right here where it says ACH destination? Okay, I can either start typing in that routing number, or remember I named it Chase. Okay, oh, Chase local branch, and there is the routing number. So you have two ways you can do it. You can either type in the name, or it helps you from fat fingering the wrong one. So that's why that table is there. The last thing you want as a payroll person is you're feeling really good about your payroll and somebody's got returned because you fat fingered somebody's routing number, right? That is the last thing any of us want. So this is a good thing when you can use that table and bring in that, so it saves you from using the wrong number. Okay, so that's the tie between, let me close that. That's the tie between ACH destination and your pay distribution. Okay, any questions on that? Right now, there's no way to load those in. That is an enhancement. If that is something that you would like to see, to be able to download these, excuse me, sorry about that, download these ad banks names and load them back in, please send us an email and we'll send that up to SSDT. But right now it's just a manual update. Any questions on ACH destinations? None? Okay. All right, let's go into our next one, which is going to be attendance. Now, this gets a little confusing. This is actually attendance absence. So this is any attendance type record is kind of how you look at that, which I'm sure many of you have already found out. So we're going to go into our attendance area. And whether you knew it or not, and again, no fault to anyone, but I'm going to go back onto the history that I had. When I started into the district, we were doing Classic at that time. The wonderful lady that was ahead of me was there for 11 years. Well, she only knew one way of doing things, and so that's how I got trained and didn't know any better, okay? So if there's something that you're doing and you're like, is there a better way of doing business? Ask us, okay? We might be able to help you, and we love doing that stuff. So please ask us if there's a way. So we're going to go over the multiple ways that you can enter attendance and absence records, and show you a really cool way to, if you're entering an attendance record, that you can actually add that to your future or current information to save you a step, all right? So in attendance, there is 3 tabs here. You may not see mass change if your district doesn't do that, so I don't want you to worry. But there's the create options. You can create an individual. There's the mass add, going to show you that. And then we can also do an import. If you recall from earlier in our conversation, I was showing a spreadsheet template that you can use for those imports, okay? So let's start at the beginning. In the grid, okay, I don't want to bypass the most fun stuff that's in here, right? So all these things, you're like, man, I wish I could pull a report for, okay, there's not an SSDT report. Okay, think outside of the box. You have the grids, okay? So you could really, let's say your principal wanted a report for absences for his building for a month. You could totally come into this grid and do that, okay? You could go to the more area. You could pull in information base that was going to be on like the employee or either on the position, like see how there's a building code and a department code. Okay, you could, I can't remember if pay group's in here, position is, so I'm going to assume pay group. Yep, pay group's in here. You could pull in by pay group, right? And you could totally pull those items into your grid, rearrange that madness however you want to, put in an activity date range, and then generate a report, okay? So again, I'm going to assume a lot of the folks on this call, they just hit the ground running and they've not gotten to utilize this grid. So let me show you. Let's say I only want to see sick leave, okay? So I can simply put in S, okay? It's smart enough to know that. And then I'm going to put in anything from, let's see, 01/01/2021 ... 03/31/2021. I'm a whole year behind, not because I'm behind, because our demo account is, so please forgive me when some of this information comes up, okay? So, of course, because my category is sick, these are all going to be absences, right? So we can totally do that. Maybe I want to just see classified, so I'm going to come over here and filter. All right, so now we're going to have a real simple report, but still the same. I want to show you what this is going to do. If you do a report by PDF, it will total columns with amounts 90% of the time. All depends on the amount you're totaling, okay? You also have all these bougie type of reports that you can do, right? CSV, CSV field names. This Excel, just got to tell you, not a fan favorite of that one, mine, but if you use this little arrow down here, see this little tiny little arrow, okay? There's the one that we use quite a bit, Excel data. That one doesn't block everything off for you. It puts it in what we're used to seeing as an Excel format. This Excel field names, I want to take a hot break here. When you use Excel field names, this is a great way if you're looking to do an extract to do a mass load, because it will automatically put the headers in there for you in the proper order. So I'm in the attendance deal, okay? Let's say I was an employee grid and I was pulling it out. Because I'm going to do that mass load back into the employee entity, that's why the headers would be proper, okay? Does that make sense? So if I'm in that area and I pull it as Excel data, that's when the headers are going to match up. If I try pulling something out of positions and I use Excel field names and I try to do a mass load in employee, that's probably not going to work. I may have to change some of my headers, okay? So remember, objects to objects, okay? All right, cool. So let's keep it as this. I'm going to go ahead and change it to landscape. Now, here's a brief note. If you keep this as PDF and you've got 50 columns in here, it's going to probably be an ugly PDF. I'm just saying it's trying to cram all 50 columns into one teeny tiny document. But let's see how that looks on this one. And it went to my other screen, so hang tight. Can y'all see that report? Yay. Okay, so this is how my report would come up. So I told you it's going to do some totaling for you. This is a PDF, okay? This is going to do some totaling for us, all right? And it's given us the information we wanted. Good stuff, cheap, right there. All right. I'm going to break that. All right, let's go add an attendance record. So we're going to do an individual attendance record, okay? Now, we're just going to simply add a couple records, and then I'm going to show you all the bougie features that come along with this. So I'm going to pick on Daisy here, and it's going to pull in her multiple compensations, okay? So I'm going to use her 20 because it's a non-contract for this one. I'm so sorry. And then I'm going to add a date of 04/15/2021. Please remember I'm a whole year behind, okay? This is going to be an attendance day, okay? And she is daily, okay? So you'll notice Just because these fields are here do not mean you have to use them, okay? So again, my new folks to redesign, okay? Just because it offers up a field to use does not mean you have to use it, okay? Some districts track by subcategory. If you're one of those districts, you know who I'm talking to. You can then add the appointment type, okay? So this is a classified employee. Pay date, let's talk about that. You do not have to enter a pay date here, okay? This pay date is used for when you post certain things, kind of like an effective date, okay? So if for in my case, I am not going to use that because I do not want to specify that. And then the sub 4. So this could be a list of your employees. Who did this person substitute for? Okay. So again, if you would like further information on this information, it's out on the documentation, or please call us or shoot us an email and we'll help you with that. Okay. So this is one way to just add simply an attendance record. Now, I'm so sorry. If Daisy has another one, I have two options. I could click the X, which is going to give me a blank row, or I could do copy row, and this just saves me a ton of time. I don't have to add my employee. It's on the same position. All I have to do is change the date, okay? And it stays the same the rest of the way across the board. Now, if I need to add a brand new employee, I would then click on the X. The X is going to drop in a blank line for you. That way you can go ahead and add in your next employee, okay? For this employee, I am going to use this, and I'm going to do, let's see, I don't know if she has a date for this. Let's see. And this one we're going to do absence. Now I want you to notice my category, or it's already on absence, my categories change, okay? What changes my category is my transaction type, right? So I'm in absence. So when I get absence, it's like, all right, what kind of an absence does this employee have? Well, we're going to keep it with sick. I'm going to go ahead and just do a half a day for her, all right? And that's all I would have to add, okay? So I think you get the premise of this. There's a copy feature, and then there's the add item feature. Now, when we get ready to save this, you have a couple options. This no posting to payroll is, the language is very confusing on this. No posting to payroll means, well, you're like, what do you mean posting to payroll? Well, if you do the drop down, it kind of helps clear things up a little bit. Do you want to post this being any attendance records or doc records, to either future or current? What is that going to do? That then will add pay information, okay? So there's the attendance record, and then there's the pay information, okay? You can link them together, okay? So if I do no posting to payroll, that means I have chosen to do my attendance and absence reporting as one transaction, and I'm going to go into future and current and do my own data entry later, okay? So that's what no posting means. It means I'm going to do those as two different steps. I'm going to pick on the post to future because not many of us are using current. So if I did post to future, I'm going to show you what's going to happen. So this is what I'm talking about being a time-saving measure. When we post to future, it is only going to, again, look at attendance or doc records because those impact pay, okay? Absences will not, okay? So if I click on save now, it's going to pop up a screen, and you'll notice, and remember, I gave Daisy Duck attendance records. I gave my other employee, Jill, I only gave her an absence record. So you notice absence didn't come in here, okay? So this is where I can now say, oh, okay, well, I don't want this as regular. I want this as miscellaneous. What this looks like? It looks like my future screen, right? This is looking back at the compensation record, okay? I know my description is 21. Please ignore that. The units that I have listed on my compensation record is 8 hours a day. The rate is $15 an hour. I can override that, okay? Let's say for this, it was 16 and I just forgot to update the compensation. Okay, you can totally do that. So let me do that just for example. Okay, we're going to change that one to 16. No, we're not going to do, this is not a supplemental payment. We're not using the supplemental tax options. Where it says retire, is this eligible for retirement? Remember your future screen. Is this eligible for retirement? Yes. Okay, then I need to give her retirement hours. Okay, so I'm going to put that in. Effective date. Again, effective date can be ignored unless you're scheduling that payment. Okay, so let me give you the definition of what effective date is. It's not the pay date. Okay, even if your pay date is August 15th, and your beginning and ending date range is 8/1 to 8/15, we still don't recommend everybody use pay date, okay? Because that differs for all of our districts across the state. So effective date's definition is your pay date range for that employee, okay? Your pay date range, so the beginning and ending date range. Now, during summer months, we all know that's chaos, right? Because we could have these three pay groups, 8/1 to 8/15, but these two pay groups are going to be actually 7/15 to 7/31 because they're timesheet peaks, right? So that effective date, again, is the pay date range that applies to that employee, okay? All right, cool. You can also change the account here, okay? So if you want to update or change the account, you can. Employer distribution, okay? It defaults to, I got to remember, I think this defaults to what the payroll account is. I'd have to go look at that. Employer distribution. Anyhow, this is Class 6 board diff, but are you wanting to use this for, excuse me, employer distribution? Okay, so I'm going to flag one as yes and one as no, just so you can see how it shows up. Are we doing leave projection? Might as well show the examples. Okay, once you have that set, you can then post this. When you post this, these items are going to show up under payroll future. Okay. Hey, Heidi, what are these two check mark boxes over here? These little tiny check marks. Are you including them or are you excluding them? Okay. So if I uncheck marked one of these, it's not going to come in. Okay. It says, hey, of all of these attendance records, I don't want them all coming in. I just want these. Okay. You can totally do that. All right. So let's go ahead and post those to future. Okay, and it tells you 2 records posted. We're going to close that. Now we're going to go up to payroll and future. Remember that was on Daisy Duck, because I don't remember if I've jumped. Hey, looky there. There's Daisy. And that just saves you 2 separate steps. Okay, why not? So I'm just throwing that out there that you have options. You can go from this side of the bridge to this side of the bridge and totally save yourself some time, okay? And you can still update these records, okay? Just because you shipped them into this pool doesn't mean you can't make any changes to them, okay? Notice I had one at a rate of 15 and one at a rate of 16. It totally updated that for me, okay? And again, you have report options from here. So this is like another way of running a future pay report, all right? So now that we've blown your mind with that, let's go back into attendance. All right. Okay, so that was showing you the create option. I showed you how to add an individual record, showed you how to copy that employee down so that saves you some manual steps, right? Showed you how to add a line, okay? And then showed you how to post that to future or current, or not post it at all. You know, if you're like, nope, I'm going to just do this, or I do attendance here, but I do, you know, my future stuff through a load. Okay, completely up to you. Everybody, dealer's choice. All right, let's do mass add. Okay, mass add is just kind of a calendar view, but in essence, I want you to think it's asking the same information that it was by creating an individual record. Okay, so again, I'm going to pick on Daisy. She gets picked on a lot, but you know, she's married to Donald, so I'm thinking she's used to it. So we're going to go to her position 20. We're going to keep it as a length of 1. Again, add an attendance for her. Look, my category changed. Check that action, right? Okay, so I'm going to do attendance. She's daily, okay? Again, it's asking for the same information, but instead of horizontal, it's asking for it vertically. Do I want to include weekends on? You're like, include weekends? I don't understand. Look at the calendar below. It runs Monday to Friday, okay? when the SSDT did their development, they did not want any accidental picking of the weekends, right? So typically weekends are saved for what? Custodians, bus drivers, a very small group of people. So they kept the noise out. So if you want to bring the noise in, you can bring the noise in. Okay, if you do include weekends, that brings in your Sunday and Saturday. All right, so let's add a start date. Okay, now here's the deal. This is mass add, right? So you can do a couple different things. We typically wouldn't come in here and add individual days, right? We would come in here and let's do 04/17/2021. There's a couple ways of doing this, so hang tight with me. 04/18/2021. I know, I only picked 2 days. Okay, so if I do that, oh, where'd my days go? Thought I tabbed out. Excuse me for that. Okay. All right, why? Oh, is April open? Yeah, April's open. Hang on here. I don't know why those are ring. Oh, it brought me to April. Here. 4/7. Is that a weekend? Nope. Yep, that's why. 04, let's do 19/2021. 04/20/2021. Thank you for bearing with me. Okay, so I added the days and now it's highlighted my calendar. Okay, now I could then clear it and like, nope, I entered the wrong days in, or those that are beginners to payroll that worked in Classic, or if you never worked in Classic before, there was a way, if you had like a custodian and they worked 9 days out of 10, okay, you could have put in the beginning date and the ending date and all was good in the world. But if they worked 9, then it kind of broke up the week a little bit. So it was 2 entries. You had to put the first group of dates and the second group of dates. Now you can come in here, and I've noticed if you get the hand, okay, if you do this, it doesn't work as well. But if you get the hand and you click on this one, and maybe they did this one, and this one, now you've added those ranges. You don't have to use the start and end date, okay? It does the same thing, especially if you like your mouse, right? You can come in here and do those, okay? And it tells you, you have selected 4 dates, okay? So let's recoup this. Daisy on position 20, a length of 1 per, okay? Attendance records. 4 dates selected, and I've got my dates down here, okay? You'll notice we have the same posting mode that we had from doing either an individual or doing multiple through the copy, okay? We can have no posting, which means don't do anything with future or current. I'll take care of that on my own, okay? Or we can do the same thing we did earlier and post that to future. Once we have everything up top selected, then we're going to click on Create, okay? It's going to tell you it was updated. And because we clicked on future, it gives us that opportunity to make those same changes. Okay, I'm just going to keep it simple for now. Okay, and I'm going to post that to future. Tells me that was posted. I'm done. I'm done. I'm going to go pay payroll. Future. Now we should have 6. I've got 3 transactions. Must have blown her out. It combined. So it combined entries on this one. You'll notice how I have 32 hours now, because remember I had 4 at 8 hours apiece at 15. So it combined those. So the mass add will do that as well. Right? Any questions so far on attendance before I show you the import option? Okay. None? Okay. All right. So, wait a minute. Under transaction type, could that be defaulted as blank? Oh, thank you, Michelle. Michelle's got you covered here. All right. So, I'm going to go up to utilities and attendance, absence, import. Okay. So, if you're making notes and this is something that you would like to consider doing, maybe you're doing manual entry right now. Okay. And you're like, you know what? I'd really like to branch out, but I am really nervous about it. It's totally okay. Okay, we can help you with that. This is where you would do an absence attendance import. If this is something you're interested in, I extend this to everyone. We can always spin up a test application for you if you want to try that stuff on for size. You can't break a thing over there, okay? It's like taking your data from the night before's backup, okay? We would spin it up in a test application, send you the URL. You can play around in that sandbox as long as you want. It lasts, we can set it up for a couple days or up to, I think, 15, but it does take up resources. So if you don't need it for that long, we do ask that you let us know, hey, I don't need it for that long, but we can set that up and then it expires and then we would have to set you up a new one. But that's totally easy to do and we can totally do that for you if there's anything in redesign applications that you want to try on for size, okay? All right, so let's go into attendance absence import. Okay, so this is an area where you're going to bring in a CSV file. So let me show you, I've got a couple of these, excuse me, ready for today. All right, so this spreadsheet, let me trade screens here. Can you guys see these spreadsheets? Yeah, thanks, Jen. Thank you, Carol. Okay, so I'm going to open this up a little bit. This is the spreadsheet template that you can pull down off of our Meta website, okay? And if it's your first time using it, we can totally help you figure out. But this has got some great cheaters on it, okay? And these are highlighted headers. The yellow ones are going to be required. They're going to tell you why they're required. These that are in pink, these are if you're updating information for pay, okay? But right now, we're just going to stick to attendance and absence reporting, okay? So I have prepared my spreadsheet, okay? So I've got my indicator code, this is required, my employee ID, which is required, the job number and redesign job numbers are required for attendance absence reporting because why? People have multiple positions now, right? And especially if you're using third parties that are like, okay, which one do they have leave on? So they're submitting it to the right one. Totally, we need to make sure we're doing that. Date, okay, this is going to be the date of the attendance or absence. The transaction type, remember when we were in the attendance screen, the transaction type determines the transaction category. So is it attendance, is it absence, okay? Then we have our transaction category. We have them all listed for you, okay? The length, okay? And then the unit type that is tied to that employee, is it daily or hourly, okay? Then there is a column clear down here, column U, okay? Do you want to use this as attendance posting? So for mine, yes, that's the purpose of my load is going to be the attendance posting, okay? Then what I do is I copy this information or I can save it right from here if I want into a CSV file. I actually have a CSV file ready for that. Let me grab it. Show you what that looks like. Nothing fancy, okay? Nothing fancy, okay? It took off the headers, okay? And we're good. So you do not need the header when you import it. So if you want to take that off, that's great. Just saves you from one error, all right? So let's show you how to do that. I think I'm going to have to close my, I think it'll bring it in. All right, so we're going to do choose file. I'm going to go to my desktop, grab my CSV file, okay? You can choose by location code. Again, this is up to your district. Again, here's my posted payroll options, okay? So we had it in the attendance, core attendance grid. Then we have it here as well. So any of my attendance records that I have on here, it will give me the option to post these to future if I want, okay? I'm just going to do straight up posting them, all right? So I'm going to say, nope, I'm going to handle these on my own, all right, to show you that example. Does your district combine attendance entries? So in other words, if I have a half day for this one and a half day reported over here, do you want those combined? Do you want to allow negative leave balances? Now, heads up on this, okay? Hopefully you are running your leave balance reports at the end of every month and you're checking on those. You know, we always learn by example, right? Had a district that was checking balances, but unfortunately someone's leave balance got away from them. And they ended up several attendance days in the hole, okay, when they didn't have sick leave to be taken. So there is no hard stop on this. It's just going to allow next. So again, you may have one person that's a brand new teacher, right? Maybe you haven't accumulated their sick day or their personal day and they've got it on here. But then you have vice versa, where you have somebody that's way past where they should be. This isn't all or nothing. You're either allowing negative for all or what. So you need to figure out how you want to do that. If you don't want to allow negative leave balances because you've got those two examples on there, then just know you need to go update that attendance record for your new teacher who hasn't gotten leave yet, okay? So just want to make note of that. I'm going to go ahead and allow, and then I'm going to leave this defined payroll account for the position. Typically, districts are using this. Honestly, I've not run across one that doesn't use this. I take that back. We do have a district, I believe, in Southern Ohio that uses it for subs, and they do the sub for SSN. So you may want that option. Mine, I'm going to keep it basic. We're going to do an import, and it's going to tell me 4 records loaded. I do have 1 error, and there were a total of 5 records. Okay, where's my error? Well, wherever your downloads go, it's going to be a CSV file. So you'll see in the bottom left-hand corner, I can go ahead and open this. And I did give ourselves an error because nothing's perfect in payroll land, right? So we're definitely going to have these situations. In the far right-hand area, you're going to see it says, error, personal leave balance would go negative for Jill Garza. Great. It did not automatically do this. It's going to let me make the judgment call on this, okay? So then I can go in and make that modification. Typically, personal leave, you don't let go in the hole, so I can update that as necessary, okay? So again, it is that simple to do an import. Now, when I say that simple, I'm just talking the import itself. Getting all the data together is you know, like we do, another story, right? Whether you're pulling it from ASOP, whether you're pulling it from Kiosk, whether you're pulling it from SCView, a lot of you have had great luck in doing that. So this was one nice thing that we got to keep as the spreadsheet not changing. Any questions on that import? Oh, and the good news is you can actually change that CSV file and reload it again if you wanted to. Or typically, if you have 1 or 2 people, you're just making those manual changes. Okay? Any questions on any of the attendance options? Okay. Thank you, team, for helping out on questions in the chat. I appreciate that. All right, we are going to go on to positions, okay? We're going to just get deep in the pool here, right? All right, so let's talk about positions. Positions, so again, we talked about the flow of employee, position, compensation, and all the other goodies, right, that are out there on the employee, okay? A position is something that the employee could hold for many years, okay? I always brought up John Doe during our training. He could be a custodian at your district for 20 plus years. His position does not change from year to year. What changes? His contract, his compensation, right? So that's the 1, 2, 3 step of getting an employee their payroll, right? Is the compensation on that end. We're going to talk about that next. But the position is driven by what the employee has and is doing. A lot of times the positions are determined, especially by if you're reporting them to EMIS, right? So if you have someone who is a custodian, but he's also a junior high basketball coach, or you're not going to put 2 compensations tied to that custodial position, right? You're going to have a position for custodian, a position for coach. Why? Because they both report to EMIS and they both have EMIS position codes that are different, okay? So if you ever have a question of, should I be creating a separate position for this employee? A lot of times that's your answer, okay? Now, we had a district who, and it was a great question, and I'm so grateful I got to work through them with that. But at the new year, they had a brand new building that they were moving teachers into, okay? And it was going to be reporting to a new IRN and all of that stuff. In that situation, they did not need to create new positions because it was in the new year and the last year had already been reported, right? We've been reported at the old IRN, been reported at the same position code, so that was okay. But if you have somebody mid-year that changes, say they go from your elementary building to your intermediate building, in that situation, you are going to want two different positions because the one's going to be reported at one and the other is going to be reported at the other. But please reach out to us and let us know if you have those situations, because a lot of them are very individual and we might be able to work around some situations, okay? But positions are going to be that main deal. So let's talk about John. He's got his custodian position and he's got his supplemental position, his coaching position. Payroll accounts are directly tied to the position, okay? Payroll accounts are linked to positions. So if you've ever noticed, when you go create a payroll account, it asks what position, okay? And then, of course, compensations are tied back to positions, and then you can always override that. But in case you needed to know, those payroll accounts are tied to the positions first. You can have multiple positions, as you probably all have seen. But what we don't want you doing is creating a position this year for custodian, a position next year for custodian, position the year after for custodian, okay? Those stay the same, okay? On the position area, let's go look at, we'll just look at Jill, her driver. All right, on the positions all have numbers, okay? Typically, don't have to, but typically districts use position number 1 as like the primary position. But again, you don't have to, it's just very traditional to do that. Position description, job status, okay? If they have a contract that you want pulled into every payroll, this job status would be active, okay? A lot of times districts will set up supplementals or subs as inactive because they're paying them on an as-needed basis, okay? So that's what inactive would be. And of course, deceased and terminated, they have their purposes at those respective times, okay? If you flag someone as terminated, you will not be able to see their leave balances. So be very careful if you use terminated too soon, okay? So let's say you still need to pay them severance, but you've already flagged them as terminated, and you're like, where's the balances? I know they have balances. Where'd they go? I can see they have leave. If you come back in here, make it inactive, then you can see that, gather the information you need, and then change it back to terminated, okay? Pay groups. Pay groups are housed solely on the position, not on the compensation, okay? A job calendar needs to be tied to a pay group. So subsequently, if you have the position and the pay group is here and you go create a compensation, it is going to know what job calendar is tied to that pay group, okay? It's the ripple effect. Here is the appointment type. If you're using the building and department code area, that's where you're going to find that. If they have extended service, their full-time equivalent for FTEs for EMIS reporting, their hire date. So you'll notice Jill was hired back in 2012. That would never change on this position. But let's say she started being the high school basketball coach in October of this year. Then that hire date would be October of this year. Again, that is district defined. Hire dates, districts go anywhere from board meetings to first day work. So you do you as far as what your district rules are for hire date. Start date, so the start date for this position, okay? So typically when you have someone that is hired in, those would match up. But let's say you're using the hire date as the board agenda date, but they actually started the position like a month later, you could use that as well, okay? Stop date, raise date, retirement code, okay? Retirement code. This is nice. You don't have to use the 400 and 450 anymore. This actually tells you, is this STRS, STRS, or none, okay? None has its purpose. Let's say you created a position. Some districts create positions to pay severance or vacation payout. Well, you don't want retirement coming out on those, so you might create that just to save yourself from accidentally retirement coming out on those. So that does have a purpose, okay? If you leave this blank, there will be an informational warning that comes up to the top of this when you go to save this record that you've not selected a retirement code. So you need to go visit that to save yourself some grief later on. Termination date, okay? That would correspond with, obviously, when they were terminated. If you are a kiosk user, this is where your supervisor ID would change, okay? There is a way to mass load these. We have templates available for mass loading supervisor changes. This time of year, it happens a lot, right? Especially if you have admin leaving certain buildings or moving from one building to another. Eligibility flags for leave. If you go to add leave to someone and let's say, why isn't it showing up? Come back to the position, okay? That's going to show where your flags are for eligibility. EMIS-related information. This contains a lot of EMIS information. So the employee obviously does, but the position itself contains a good part of the EMIS-related information for staff. Again, we have beginning users on here. Let's talk about what a CI record is. I'm going to take a brief pause. A CI record and a CK. You may hear EMIS people talking about CI records and CK records, or they're throwing you their EMIS errors and say, hey, figure this out. And you're like, I don't know where to go. Employee is your CI record, okay? Employee is your CI record. CK records are a combination of position and compensation records, okay? Position and compensation. Again, the horse before the cart. It's going to be the position and then the compensation. I will tell you, staff reporting is going to be starting up here soon, and a lot of times we get these reports back missing staff, okay? Let me give you a cheat right out of the gate. If you get a report back that says missing staff, here's the things we want you to check first. For missing staff, on those three records, employee, position, and compensation, make sure they're all reportable to EMIS, and make sure the records that are supposed to be reported are not archived. 90% of the time, that's going to catch it. Okay, 90% of the time, that's going to catch it. Okay? If you can't find it with searching those, you let us know and we'll go help you. Okay? But a lot of times, that's going to catch your missing staff. Maybe somebody has accidentally gone in and archived last year's record, but they're being reported as separated and they're not pulling in. It could be separation date and reason. Maybe somebody archived somebody that's still supposed to be reporting this year. Excuse me. Excuse me. All right. So EMIS-related information. Here's going to be your reportable to EMIS flag. Here's going to be the position code. Again, payroll folks, you may not be entering this, but you are going to be working closely with EMIS people to get these errors fixed. So it's a good idea where to know. State reporting a type. The position type, okay? So this is where you're going to get your regular, supplemental, or temporary. This employee happens to be a sub, so it is temporary, which I don't know why she's reportable to EMIS, but again, demo stuff. Position status. Typically, this is going to be a C for your regular employees, okay? Full-time equivalent, your special or full-time, your low grade and high grade. So if they have a degree, you're going to be required to put in low grade, high grade, which is high grade. Where's my high grade? Oh, clear down here. Low grades to the far left, high grades to the far right. Separation, reason, and date down here. Okay, separation, reason, and date. And are they a paraprofessional? If so, you can record that here, okay? These next three fields, contract amount, contract work days, and hours in the day, okay? If you have a screenshot of this or you're making notes under the EMIS-related information on your position record, okay, these are override fields, okay? And you're like, what do you mean by an override field? Again, we're in the EMIS area, so it would be an EMIS override field. So let's say this person is splitting time, or they left mid-year or something along that line. There's something wonky with them, okay? You may have to come in here and update the contract information. Right now, EMIS reporting looks at the employee record, looks at the position, and then looks at the compensation for the amount, okay? If we needed to change the contract amount and the data collector was pulling a collection and it sees a value in this contract amount, it's going to do a hard stop. It's going to use this contract information and not the compensation amount, okay? So just want to let you know that these three areas are overrides to the compensation, okay? All right, building IRN is going to be reported here, and experience current class. Funding sources, for a regular employee, you're going to have funding sources. Typically it's local, it's L, F, or G most of the time, and then, or this is the assignment error, excuse me, then this is your F, L, or G, local, government, state, those types of things, okay? And a lot of times your EMIS people, if you're the payroll person, a lot of times your EMIS people are telling you what to put there if they're not doing it themselves, okay? This area also has, or this position record also has standard and payroll and personnel areas. If this is information that you're not using, again, we can hide those if they're bothering you. At the bottom of the position record, there's some read-only data, okay? Tells you what compensation is currently tied to it. Again, not archived, okay? If this employee had 10 compensations and they weren't archived, they'd all show here, okay? So, and then the payroll accounts are listed at the bottom. Again, just an overview. Any questions on positions? Okay, Michelle, thank you so much for putting those links out on the chat. Also, if you have the agenda that we sent, all of the links are on there as well if you do need. So thank you, thank you. Any questions on position right now? Any questions on position? Not seeing any. Oh, okay. Okay, we're going to go ahead and cancel that. This is nice. Hey, for users that are either new or those that are on the call that are experienced, have you noticed this yet? This pay screen? How many of us, including us as fiscal staff, are going in here and doing 10 screenshots for one record, right? You don't have to do that anymore. Now we can do print screen, and it is going to create you this bougie little PDF that you can do whatever you want to do with. All right? So just want to let you know that's out there. And, oh, so this is a great thing. We were talking about EMIS, right? You could send this to your EMIS person and say, so what I do wrong, right? What do you want me to fix? What's, you know, so this is another way of communicating with your EMIS peeps if you need to. I also want to show you this, okay? This audit report, you're going to start seeing it on a lot of individual things. It's on payroll items, it's on positions. This audit report relates specifically to the record you are on. So it's only going to relate to this position. I don't have to dig through the weeds or filter anything else. I want to know any changes that I've had on this since 01/01/2021 to, it's going to automatically put in today. I'm going to generate that report. Let's see if I get anything. Yeah, it's going to tell me, look, Heidi made, in fact, let's blow this up because my little geriatric eye is here. Okay. It's going to say this is when it happened and the time and when it happened. Who did it? What was done? It was modification to the position, okay? And then if we scroll over, all right, not playing good in the sandbox. There we go. What changes were made? It tells me what the old value was and what the new value was. How slick is that? Okay, so if you ever need a smoking gun, as we lovingly call it, there's your smoking gun. All right. Good stuff. All right, no other questions on positions? Sweet. All right, so we're going to go into, you know what, let's go into the dashboard to talk about compensation. So we're going to go pick on Daisy again. All right. And we talked about positions. Of course, when we do positions, they're all going to be listed here. I do want to bring to your attention this little include archive, okay? So if you have someone that maybe isn't doing, I don't know, maybe Daisy's not superintendent anymore and she went back to being a secretary because it was a lot less stressful, you could always archive that position, okay? And if you do that, again, it's not deleting it. We're going to do, see, this shouldn't say delete, but it does. We're going to do delete, and you're like, crap, where'd it go? No fear, just hit it. You do include archive, and it's going to bring that back in, okay? All right, again, you have the more button, so you can bring in all kinds of information here to look up positions. Maybe pay groups. Maybe you like to pull in pay groups. Let's look at compensations. All right. An employee can have multiple compensations. Why is this good? Well, actually, this is great. The longer you are in redesign, the more history you have at your fingertips without having to go back into some historical files, okay? Why else is this good? You can do a report from here and pull down the last 10 years. Maybe you want the contract amount and the dates and all that kind of jazz, okay? Why is this also important? Retirement reporting. If you have never had to fill out a retirement before, count your blessings. It's going to be coming if you're doing payroll. Sirs and stirs. When someone goes to retire, you have to fill out retirement reports for them. You basically have to report the last 5 years' earnings. When we were in the old software, it was a little hard to do. You had to go back into some history files, back into payroll files. You may still have to do that, but not as much now. Now you can come in here and say, okay, I need to only pull in the last 5 years worth of stuff, go document everything, and you also have like an employee earnings register that you can do. We're going to cover reports at a later time. But now you can come in here and see how much they were paid each year. Inevitably, we always had those teachers that did 1 day of tutoring 5 years ago, but STRS wants to hear about it. They know about it, but they want you to confirm that they did 1 day of tutoring 5 years ago. So this will make it much easier to go find, okay? On compensation records, there are some, I'm going to give you some big cheats today, okay? They're going to help you in the future. Help you, help your predecessor, anybody in redesign. So again, you can have multiple compensations. You can have multiple compensations tied to one position, okay? Obviously, we talked about John Doe earlier. He's been here for 25 years. He has 25 different compensations, right? Just for his custodian job. Can you have 2 contract compensations tied to one position? Yes. Can you have a non-contract and contract compensation tied to one position? Yes. Okay? If you have 2 contract compensations tied to one position in the same year, the compensation codes must be different. They can have the same start, same stop date, but the compensation codes must be different. Okay? Good stuff. An example. Worked with the district whose administrators also got like an administrative education type of pay. It was like a supplemental pay. And they spread that out over all of their pays for the entire year, but they wanted it tied to the same position, okay? So instead of doing a non-contract where they are having to go in every pay and do that, we set that up so that it's automatically pulling in when they initialize payroll all the time, okay? So smarter, not harder, okay? We want to make your life nicer and easier, okay? This holds, compensations hold the contract amount values, and your compensations are required, contract compensations are required to have contract start and stop dates. And all of you, I can almost hear the eyes rolling back in your head for this summer and what you've had to do to fit everything in. It's okay, right? Experience is by far the best teacher when it comes to contract start and stop dates, okay? So let me go look at, I've got Daisy here with a contract for 23. This is going to be another cheat I'm going to show you. First thing we're going to show you is a contract compensation. Okay? And team, you guys might need to holler at me when we get to be about 10 till, please, because I'm just going to keep rattling off. All right? Contract compensations. Contract compensations, so let's give you the definition of both. Contract compensations are those that are getting consecutive pays with equal amounts per pay. Okay? Consecutive pays, equal amounts per pay. Okay? So that's going to be our normal peaks. Our teachers, us, bus drivers, aides, cooks, right? They're over 24, 26 pays. It's the same amount over every. Okay? You can also do a contract compensation for a one-time pay. You can. It's a little time consuming. If you count the number of steps just to create a one-time, it's actually 1 or 2 steps less if you do a non-contract and enter into future. So again, dealer's choice on how you like to see things come into your payroll, okay? So we can work with you, okay? There's no one peg to fit it in. Non-contract compensations are not consistent pays, not equal amounts of pay, and can be paid randomly over periods of time with different amounts, okay? So it's kind of the same verbiage, just a different way of saying it. So those would be our substitutes. Maybe our supplementals that we're paying 3 times a year or 2 times a year. Now, you can set those up as non-contract compensations and actually go schedule them in future. So let's say you have your fall supplementals, okay? You've got them all set up as non-contract compensations. You could actually go into future now, put them in there and use that field called effective date. If you already know when their first pay and second pay is going to be, all you have to do is look at the pay period for those and put one of those dates in there, okay? And that schedules them out. So when you get ready to do that payroll, it's already going to be sitting in future for you, okay? So if you have those types of situations, there is no one size fits all for supplementals, okay? No one size fits all. Every district does everything different. In fact, I talked to one district who had like multiple different ways for all of their supplementals because of how their master agreement was dictated. So even within one district, you might have multiple ways of doing that. But don't let supplementals become overwhelming to you as a new payroll person, okay? So this is a contract compensation. So of course, when we go to create this, it's going to say contract, and I'll show you what a create looks like. This code, although it looks wonky, tells me that it came from the new contract area, okay? Typically, if you're building a new compensation right from the dashboard, you're going to enter in your own compensation code. We recommend to users, based on what the SSTT recommended to us, putting in, you'll notice the 2-digit month, so 08, and then the year, 2022, -A. Okay, typically if you're building a brand new compensation, that's what we would recommend. Remember I gave you the situation with the district who had 2 contract compensations? If they created those in the dashboard, they would do 08-2022-A, and the other one could be 08-2022-B. Why is that helpful? One, if you ever needed to filter the grid for your compensation records and maybe something wasn't working out right with the start dates, or maybe you had people that started later in the year, right? Maybe you have a teacher that starts in October, not September. You could use those codes to help filter out that data or bring in additional data, okay? So just want to keep that available to you. Anything that has a field in any of these records can be filterable in a grid, okay? So again, I know this wonky code came in from new contracts. So 2 ways to build a contract compensation, either through the dashboard, 3. through the dashboard, through core and compensations. I always forget about core and compensations because there's easier ways to do things. Gosh dang, there's 4. I just thought of a 4th one. Core and compensations, dashboard, new contract, or employee onboarding. Employee onboarding is another way to, bring in a contract compensation, but you're manually building it in there, but it is a 4th way of doing that, okay? Job calendar is going to pull in why, okay? Because this compensation is tied to position 1, and position 1 is pay group secretary, and according to that, the secretary calendar is tied to that. Can I override the job calendar? Absolutely yes. Here's why. Let's say you have teachers and they are all tied to the teacher pay group, teacher calendar, but you have a part-time teacher, okay? You want to keep that part-time teacher as a part of your pay group for all your teachers, but they have a 90-day job calendar. Okay, well, I can update that in here. I can change it, okay, which I would. Here's why. Because you're going to end up changing the days worked. And if you go to calculate this, it's going to see the teacher calendar 185 days and give you a unit amount based on that and not based on your 90-day part-time teacher, okay? So I totally recommend updating job calendars on contract compensations. Here's your cheats, okay? Huge cheats. If you're doing new contracts, when I know timing's a little late on that, you guys probably have most of them done, but this can still be done, okay? This can still be updated. We recommend in the description area and in your label area, you throw in the fiscal year that this contract compensation applies to, okay? You can simply do a copy and paste or whatever, but we recommend that those fiscal years be added. Why? Especially if you're brand new to redesign and maybe you came in wave 8 or 9 and we're getting ready to go into the new fiscal year, we are going to want to be able to have something in the grid to filter by. So there's multiple things we can filter by, but this is the easiest one. We can filter by that and say FY22, pull them into the grid, and we can archive and mass change all of the report to EMIS by filtering that way, okay? So this is just our recommendation to you. When you have something that you can update and it takes you 2 seconds to do and it's going to make your life easier to filter on in the future, think outside the box, right? Make your life easy in the future. Call us, email us and say, hey, is there something you guys could recommend for 5 years down the road? And we will help you with that, right? We love thinking outside of the box for you, okay? So again, those are 2 big cheats, okay? Also, with description and label, not only does it have that purpose, but the label shows up on their pay stubs, okay? Label shows up on pay stubs. This description shows up if you're ever going, how many of you, and I know you have, gone into future and you pulled up an employee and there's like 3 compensations sitting there and you're like, I have no idea which one this is. I got to go look or archive the other ones, because until they're archived, you see them, right, in some of the drop downs. If you put FY23 in front of it, it is like a beam of light when you go use that drop down and you're like, nope, I know I want that one, right? It's fiscal 23, okay? So those are just some cheats for you. Let's talk about compensation start and stop dates for contracts, okay? Contract start and stop dates. Start and stop dates, let's talk about start first. The number 1 rule of thumb, it must include or be the first day being paid on their job calendar, okay? So for my secretary, her first work day, paid day, however you want to call that, is August 1st of this year, okay? So I need to make sure to include that. Second is, can you use that date to fit it into a payroll? I've talked to several districts this year that, and I get it, they are all brand new to redesign, okay? Again, experience makes a great teacher. They're like, well, I went with a date within my payroll range, but let's say this employee starts on August 1st, but their payroll range was 8/5. What's going to happen? It is, remember the claw I talk about in redesign training. When you do your payroll, when you initialize your payroll and you put in that beginning and ending date, that acts like a claw. That range, that beginning and ending date, goes out and looks at all these calendars that you're pulling into payroll, and it says, oh, there's days worked there. I'm going to gather them up, not only for days worked, but for service days. So it's totally going to miss this secretary's August 1st through the 4th because you didn't put that in the range, okay? And you're like, well, wait, how do I fix that? Easy, but make sure always that the contract compensation start date includes the first day worked. We can work on getting you into payroll, okay? We can work on getting that into payroll. That's through what's called add date range, okay? So we're going to talk more about that later when we do a payroll processing. So the number one rule of thumb is compensation start date must be the first day on their job calendar, okay? That's first rule. Compensation stop date is just a little different, okay? It does two things. And again, it relates on the employee and what pay group they're in and what their calendar is, right? How many of you found out this year that your 12-month people, your calendar butts up to each other, right? The last day worked butts right up to the start day of the next year. So now you have to be really careful, okay? But when it comes to secretaries or teachers that kind of have that gap month or two that don't have any days worked in there, you have a little flexibility. So let me explain this. The compensation stop date must be inclusive of the employee's last day worked and be a date within their last pay on contract's date range, okay? This secretary's job calendar for this year, her last day work for this year is going to end up being June 30th, okay? And you're like, well, Heidi, why do you have 7/31 in here then? Hold tight with me, okay? The stop date looks, so it's looking between the start date and the stop date. Does this stop date include that last day worked on the job calendar of 6/30? It does, okay? We know for sure it does. Between the beginning and ending, it includes June 30th, okay? But the final pay on payroll is my last pay in July for her, for this contract, and my date range goes 7/15 to 7/31, okay? So I can use 7/31 there. Why? Because it does not conflict with my next year's calendar that starts on 8/1, okay? Typically, we tell you, if you're working with teachers especially, use an earlier date in that last pay, okay? So for my secretary, her last pay is the last pay of July. Date range is 7/15 to 7/31. For like teachers or whatever, I would say, and our team would probably tell you, use an earlier date in that date range, okay? Like use 7/15, right? Because you know it's not going to conflict with next year's job calendar. So you're not accidentally bringing in next year's work days on last year's earnings, okay? So if you ever have that type of situations, please let us know. Here's another thing that it impacts, okay? It could impact your earned amount because when we do payroll, the beginning and ending date looks at these dates. So I'm going to go back to my example. If I did 8/5 to 8/14 for this payroll, it's going to exclude 4 days. Well, it's going to update the days worked, right? But it's not going to have enough. Well, what does days worked impact? It impacts my earned amount. So if I don't pull in the proper amount of days, my earned amount will never be right. So if you go to do a mid-year contract change on them, it's not going to be right because you don't have all the days pulled in. So let us know if we need to help you and look at some things with you, okay? All right, pay plan is self-explanatory. This needs to be the proper pay plan for what you're paying the employee on, okay? Pay unit, is it daily or hourly? Unit amount, once you create your new contract compensation and you have all the information in, if you have work days in, if you have contract amount, obligation, stretch pay, all that kind of jazz, and you calculate it, it will automatically update the unit amount and the pay per period. Or you can manually enter it and it overwrites it, okay? So, but be very cautionary of that. Retirement hours, tax options, archived. Here's the archive flag on a compensation. Okay, so remember, if you have missing staff this fall, that's one of the places to go look. And then this days worked area is grayed out. Why? Because it is updated when you post payrolls. Okay, this will be updated when you post payrolls. If you have an example where somebody didn't get all of their days pulled in on their first payroll, no harm, no foul. We can help you with that. We can actually go down and do what's called a compensation adjustment and get those days worked updated for you and update that earned amount. So if you have those situations, please let us know and we'll work through that with you. Okay? Days, the contract work days, that should be the number of days on that job calendar up above. So just a note, when SSDT made all the changes that were requested by users for these compensations, they removed the override flags, but when they removed the override flags in that, it also removed where this calculated the work days. Remember how it used to look at the start and stop date and automatically update that? It does not do that now. You will have to update that appropriately. I personally missed it because by putting in your start and stop date, it was a double check to make sure you had all the days in there proper, but it is what it is. So you will need to update that. Pay per period. This will be calculated, as will the unit amount if you're creating a manual compensation. Again, there will be certain fields you need to have filled out and then do calculate at the top, and it will calculate that for you. We suggest you do that. We suggest you do that so nothing gets miscalculated. Contract amount, contract obligation. Contract type is optional. Some districts use a contract type field. Pays in contract, if you're a 24 or 26 pay person, you're going to need to update that. If you did new contracts this year, somebody may have started late last year, you want to make sure that they have the proper amount. Retro next pay, this could come in either by you manually entering it in here or doing a mid-year change through new contract. Stretch pay, this is incredibly important if you're calculating to get unit amount and pay per period, or not unit amount, excuse me, pay per period amount, and to make sure that they come in on your payroll when you do initialization. Again, that's contract compensations. Here are your compensation amounts. Again, the amount earned can be updated, and amount paid and docked, I think, and paid can be updated through the adjustments area. Some districts use this salary schedule updating. This can be done through a load or can be updated through manually here or can be updated through new contract, okay? Here's your reportable to EMIS flag, okay? Here is your historical context. Let's talk about this for a moment. You do not have to change calendar start dates for employees that have been there forever, okay? That is not necessary to do. If you have a brand new employee, you'll want to make sure that that calendar start date more than likely is going to match that compensation start date, okay, for brand new employees, okay? That's a scenario where that would indeed match. Calendar start and stop dates are used for service days reporting for your retirement systems, okay, so SIRS and STIRS, and used for the advance, okay? I learned that the other day. Thank you, Sharon. Learned that the other day. And then it is also used for ODJFS weeks, okay? So about the only time you ever need to add a stop date, calendar stop date, don't do it in new contract if you have new compensations, okay? Is if someone leaves, okay? Let's see, someone leaves mid-year, someone leaves mid-week before you've paid them and you don't want all those retirement days going in. Let's say your pay period ends on the 15th, but the employee left on the 5th. You're going to want to come in and put a calendar stop date in here so you don't have to go do manual adjustments on retirement reporting or ODJFS weeks, okay? So again, that's the calendar start and stop. This contract change extension type, this just tells you where this came from, okay? Remember I noted at the top that I had this compensation code that had the funky things. I'm like, oh, I know where that came from. It came from new contract just because of how the code was. This confirms it, okay? This came in as new contract, and this was the old compensation record that was used to create this new one. Okay, so again, this is historical to context. This is going to give you information just saying that it's tied to this pay group. And then down here under compensation adjustments, this is where I was talking about where we can assist you if you find out maybe days weren't pulled in properly for someone, or maybe you brought in a new teacher, you know, 2 pays after everybody else is getting paid, but you need to make sure that you're including that. There's a couple ways to do that. Definitely a couple ways to do it. You could create a special pay group just for one pay to pull them into a payroll, or you can just pay them and come in here and do an adjustment. Dealer's choice as to where you're at. If you ever have those situations, contact us, let us know, and we will help you through that. For some of these grayed out fields in here, you can update the amount paid. You can update the amount earned. So in that situation, if they were shorted days, we would need to update the amount earned and the days worked by 4, and then give a description, which is awesome. We can just say days missed by first payroll, okay? Something intentional, okay? And then you would save that, okay? So that is a contract compensation. Let me show you what it looks like if we do create. The first thing it's going to ask you is, what position are we creating one for? Okay, I'm going to create one for the secretary, and then what's the type? Contract or non-contract, okay? So that is then going to pull that in. You're not going to be able to change that. If you accidentally click contract and you're like, crap, I didn't want contract, you can archive it or delete that out of there and then go back in and do your non-contract one. All right, so we've talked about contract. Let's go into non-contract. We're actually going to create one. This is a whole lot easier and a lot less complex, all right? This is going to be for subs, supplementals, anything along that line. Notice it brought in my type, non-contract. You can give it any code you want. SSD just recommends a letter. Maybe you just want to stick with the same theory. I'm going to go with that theory of this, and I still want to keep, for consistency's sake, that this was a non-contract and this is when it was started. I'm going to, remember, it's tied to position 1. Well, this is non-contract. So I'm going to actually use my default calendar for this, because again, I might be giving attendance days, things along that line. Okay, I'm going to put miscellaneous jobs. Okay, just or miscellaneous pay, what have you. Okay, I can copy, actually I won't copy it down here. I could just put sub here because they're going to see that on their pay stub, or I could put extra here. Again, dealer's choice. This one isn't essential to put the full fiscal year in front of, just because it has different intentions and use than contract. Compensation start and stop date. These are not necessary, but it is recommended to at least put a start date in there. Again, make sure that it's going to include their first attendance day that you put in and a date within payroll. Okay, so if you do that, all right? So I'm just going to put in something along the lines of this, because again, I'm a year behind. I can leave the stop date out, pay plan. My demo is biweekly. Pay unit's going to be hourly. And let's say their standard rate of pay is $15 an hour. I'm not going to put in retirement hours because that's going to depend on what they're doing. I can always put that into future, okay? They're not in the advance, not archived, hours in the day, not primary compensation, okay? That's pretty much it. Calendar start, you would want to put something in there, again, because we want to make sure they're getting days pulled in for that. And this is not reportable to EMIS. Seriously, so much simpler to do a non-contract compensation. So if you know how to do a contract, non-contract's like a cakewalk, right? It's a piece of cake. All right? You can also do a print screen on this and an audit report. All right? All right, looks like I got about 12 minutes to go. All right, so I want to take, that was great timing. Payee and payroll item configuration. I don't want to not leave time for question and answers, so let's ask question and answers first. If we have enough time, we'll start into the next piece. If not, we'll carry that over to the next training. Does anybody have any questions? Please feel free to either put it in the chat or unmute yourself for anything that we have covered today.
Hi, Heidi, I did have a question, and we don't have to re-review it because I may have missed something. When you talked about, I'm the person that does the retirement reporting. And so traditionally I've had to do the 5 years, and I would go back to Classic and get all of that information. Are you saying that all that information now is in redesign? Because I don't see it. And you know, I may be missing something, and you may have reviewed that, so excuse me, but are you saying that I should be able to find all the information I need on redesign?
Janice, great question, and thank you for bringing it up. I always adore it when Janice is on here because she is not afraid to ask questions. I adore you. I adore you. So good question, Janice. And no, I wish I could say yes, but Classic information like attendance and that kind of stuff, all of those file archives were actually brought into your application. So I'm going to show you where to go find some of that stuff because, of course, you know, Classic is decommissioning here, right? It's going away after December. So I'm going to show you where to find that stuff, Janice, but she brings up a good point. Any compensations from your migration year forward are going to be in redesign in this area, in your compensation. Does that make sense, Janice? So let's see, Trotwood, did you guys come over last fall?
No, we came out April of 2021, maybe, or something. Yeah, maybe April of 21, I think.
Okay.
It was.
A little
20,
longer than what I thought. That's okay. I'll trust me.
It might have been 20. I don't remember, but I think it was April sometime in the last couple of years. I think it was 20 then.
Okay. So the year you migrated, okay, you're going to have that fiscal year's compensations and anything you've had in redesign forward, okay? So you're going to be able to find those meat and potatoes right here in the compensation grid. So if you came on in 20, in a couple more years, you're going to have that 5 years worth of stuff right here for you, which is the best, right? So Janice brings up an awesome point. So let's show you. Now, I'm not going to have it, okay, because I'm in my demo. But if you want to see where your file archives are at, if you go to File Archive, and this is Payroll, okay, you're going to see it in here. Is there a district that I can pick on, a Marion district? Because I know I don't have to reset my password. Do we have a Marion district on here that you guys don't mind me tapping into and just showing file archives?
And Heidi, where do you go to file archives? Is it, where is that?
Yes, ma'am. It's under utilities.
Okay, got you. All right. Okay.
Jason, awesome. Thank you, Jason Fleming. I appreciate you. All right, I'm going to go jump into Jason's district. Sorry for the scroll. Those are all of our districts. That aren't all of our districts in redesign. So Jason's gracious enough to let me go. Hold, please. See, it happens to us too, everybody. We don't get a pass. I wish we did. We do not get a pass. Oh, dear Lord, now it's going to slow play me. Janice, I'm sorry. Now it's like slow playing me.
Well, I'm looking at mine. If you want me to just keep doing something, I can. I'm in our file archive where you are.
Yep, that's okay. I'm going to try. Can you guys still see my screen even?
We just see username and old password, new password.
Yeah, it's like froze up for some reason. Ah! Hold on. I may have to do a new share. I'm so sorry, everyone. We were doing so well. Okay. I think I'm back in business. All right. Thanks for holding on with me, Pete. Appreciate it. Update, update, update. Come on. Oh, good grief. I'm not, I'm going to stop sharing and then start sharing again. Sorry, folks. Can you see my screen? Okay, thank you. I don't know why it's not working. I can't do anything now. This is great. Good stuff, cheap. No crud. All right, one more time here. I'm going to shoot for a different screen. All right. Can you see Meta Solutions? All right, let's try to. Thank you. I think it was Jen. Thank you. I need to get back into my demo. So sorry, everyone. Now, when Jason calls me and says he's having trouble getting into his district, I'll be like, I know, right? Okay, finally. All right, thank you, everyone. Sorry for that pause. All right, so we're going to go to utilities. File archive. Okay, this is to get to classics PDFs. You guys all remember you used to go out to the Meta website and get your PDF reports. You go into fiscal archives. This all got moved over into here for you. I know we were having network trouble in our office this morning, so I'm hoping that's not revisiting now. All right, I'm just going to guide you there because we're going to just hang tight. So you're going to go to utilities, file archives, and then it is under, I can't even get back to that. All right, I'm going to have to rely on one of my teams. Is it under the main folder? I think it is. I think it's under the main tab.
You mean the tabs, the payroll archive, pay from archive, W-2 archive, other and audit reports? Is that what you're asking?
Yep. So you should see reports. I think it's under the main tab, Miss Janice. And if you look down through there, you're going to see some classic years, 2019, 2018. If you're in utilities and file archive and you're in that first tab, you should start seeing all the classic years prior to migration in there. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do. I see 2019. Yes, I do. And I do see 2020. So yes.
Okay, good. So if you, oh, thank the Lord. Okay, so here we go. So if you're in here and see how I've got like 2011, again, this is Ridgedale's files. So I'm not going to open any files, I promise. But you have a couple ways of doing this. You can do the eyeball. Okay, so you'll notice these are all classic named reports, right? So you can go in here and download any of these. It's going to have the timestamp from when we imported those in to your application. But these are going to be all of those reports that came off of the website, okay? So, you know, I could go into 2011. I'm going to see by folder, absence reports, audit reports, W-2 type reports, year-to-date reports, again, based on the folder that I'm looking for. So Janice, for you and your retirement reporting, you are going to actually end up looking for, let's see, you would go into, you could either go into first, second, third quarter reports. You could go into calendar year-end reports. That could give you grand totals. You could go into fiscal year-end reports, Janice, because that's going to give you an employee master. Remember Classic's employee master reports? You can find earnings that way. So there's all kinds of little things. Again, however you did it in Classic on those reports, you could come back in here and look at. So thank you so much for asking that question. Jason, thank you kindly, sir, for letting me borrow your application. All right, any other questions? That was a great question. Thank you, thank you. Any others? Come on, Janice can't be my only unshy person.
So can I ask a real quick question? As I'm looking
Sure.
under like the, what am I looking under? The files, it says fiscal year end file for the,
Yep.
I can't even remember what the classic report is, but we used to look at, it wasn't compensation, but whatever. But this wage actuals, is that the wages? Then we would look under to find information or something. I'm looking for the checks, I guess. Where would the checks?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see check stat. Let me see. All right, I'll just have to play with it, Heidi. And if I have questions, I'll just have to ask questions
Okay.
the next time I'm doing it, because when does the classic go away? Or is it gone?
December.
Okay, all right. Well, I have.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And you'll hear things. Oh my gosh, it's gone.
Yeah. Yep.
Hard to believe. Those of us that have been on Classic for a while, we're still scratching our head going, can't believe it finally happened, right? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy, crazy. But yep, yeah, any of those reports, my friend. And then again, you can even look at some SIRS or STIRS month reports too. I always use those for my retirement reporting. So you could go back into your archives and find them.
Okay. All right. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're
Okay.
welcome. Yeah. Anybody else? All right, we